Sometimes you don't realise just how much you're losing yourself until one day you wake up and you don't even recognise the person staring back at you. This isn't some story about a perfect marriage falling apart overnight. It's about all the little cracks, tamam, the tiny hurts, the slow unravelling you try so hard to ignore until you can't anymore. This is my story, how I loved the wrong person, how I stayed too long, and how, somehow, I found my way back to myself. If you've ever doubted your worth, if you've ever wondered if you're just too sensitive, stay with me, you're not alone. I met Nicholas on one of those nights that felt like anything was possible. The air was warm, the music was loud, and the world just seemed softer somehow. I wasn't looking for anything that night, just drinks with co-workers, a few laughs after a long week at the insurance office. But then, there he was. He stood by the bar like he belonged there, confident without trying too hard. That easy smile, that quick laugh, like he saw something funny about the world the rest of us missed. When he offered to buy me a drink, a White Claw, not some fancy cocktail, it felt real, easy, like breathing. We talked for hours that night, about stupid things, favourite movies, worst bosses, that one awful road trip he took in college where the car broke down 3 states away. It was effortless, like slipping into a conversation we'd been having forever. When he laughed at my jokes, really laughed, not just being polite, something inside me unlocked, something I hadn't even realised was closed off. Nicholas made me feel seen, like in a room full of people. He only had eyes for me. He didn't just ask me about my job. He wanted to know what I dreamed about, what made me stay up too late thinking, what made me laugh when no one was watching. I remember walking out of that bar, tipsy on more than just White Claws, and thinking, maybe this was how love started, not with fireworks or grand gestures, but with something quiet, something that felt like coming home. Our first date was at a little Italian place downtown. He showed up with flowers, not roses, but sunflowers, bright and a little awkward, just like him. He listened when I talked, held the door open without making a big show of it, made me laugh so hard I nearly snorted wine out my nose. 2 years later, he proposed at the same bar where we met. He got down on one knee right by the jukebox, in front of everyone, with this crooked little smile, like he wasn't sure if I'd say yes. Of course I said yes. How could I not? He made me feel special, chosen, loved. I thought we were building a forever kind of love. I thought I had found my person. Back then, I still believed in happy endings. If the story ended there, maybe it would have been perfect. Maybe we would have stayed frozen in that soft, golden moment, where everything felt easy and love felt enough. But real life isn't a photograph you can frame and hang on the wall. It moves, it shifts, and sometimes it starts to shift in ways you barely notice, until one day you look around and realise you're standing somewhere you never meant to be. For a while, I told myself it was normal, that every marriage has growing pains, that tiny compromises were just part of building a life together. I didn't see it at first, how slowly, how quietly, things were starting to change. After we got married, everything felt like it was falling into place, or at least, that's what I told myself. Nicholas brought up the idea of merging our finances during our first week back from the honeymoon. He said it so casually, like it was just the natural next step. That's what married couples do, he said, with that easy smile that used to make my stomach flip. He made it sound like a promise, like a team effort. I wanted to be a good wife. I wanted to do everything right. So I agreed. He took the lead, setting up new accounts, arranging direct deposits. I didn't really think twice about it. I let him take care of things because it made him happy, and because deep down, I thought maybe that's what being loved looked like, trusting someone completely. At first it was small, tiny, almost invisible shifts. I'd come home from the grocery store with a bag full of basics, bread, milk, a few things for dinners, and Nicholas would glance at the receipt and laugh. 7 for organic milk? Babe, this is why I have to check the statements, he'd say, teasing, ruffling my hair like I was a kid who didn't know better. It embarrassed me. but I laughed it off. I told myself it was nothing. The first time I got a small raise at work, a tiny bump, but still something, I was so proud. I wanted to celebrate, to maybe go out for dinner, just the two of us. But when I told Nicholas, he barely looked up from his phone. "Well, it's not like your management material or anything," he said with a smirk. "But hey, it's cute they gave you a little something." I laughed with him. But inside, something wilted. He always framed it like a joke. Always added, "I'm just teasing. You know I love you." And because I wanted so badly to believe that love was supposed to feel like this, safe, playful, familiar, I convinced myself to let it slide. It kept happening. When I mentioned wanting to apply for a promotion, he shook his head and chuckled. "Honey, that's not really your lane. Stick to what you're good at. Besides, I make enough for both of us. And then, as always, I'm just teasing." It got harder to tell when he was joking and when he wasn't. Harder to tell if I was overreacting or if he was right about me. Every little decision started to feel like a test I was failing. Did I really need that fancy shampoo? Was it stupid to want a new pair of shoes when mine was still fine? Was I being irresponsible, selfish, silly? He made me doubt myself in ways I didn't even realise at first. And the worst part, I thought it was my fault. I thought, maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I wasn't smart enough about money. Maybe he really did know better. Slowly, piece by piece, I gave away parts of myself. Not because he demanded it loudly, but because he eroded my confidence so quietly, so patiently, that I barely noticed it happening. Until one day, without even realising it, I was second-guessing everything. I was apologising for things I hadn't even done wrong. I was shrinking, just to make sure he didn't have another joke at my expense. I thought this was normal. I thought this was love. And that's the scariest part, how easy it was. To mistake control for care, to mistake cruelty for closeness. Looking back now, I realise it was never just about the jokes, or the receipts, or the promotions I never applied for. It was about something deeper, something slower. The slow wearing down of trust, not just in him, but in myself. The way small hurts stack up quietly, neatly, until one day you look down and realise you're standing on a mountain you didn't even know you were climbing. I kept telling myself it would get better. That if I just tried harder, loved him more, made fewer mistakes, things would go back to the way they were, back to that soft, golden beginning. But real life doesn't work that way. The cracks don't just disappear because you close your eyes. And eventually, the cracks split wide open. Because no matter how tightly you hold a crumbling thing together, it's still falling apart. At first, I told myself it was just work. Nicholas started coming home later, that's all. Longer hours, bigger projects, more responsibility. It made sense, didn't it? But then it wasn't just 6 o'clock anymore. It was 7 o'clock, then 8 o'clock. Some nights, even later, he always had a reason. Drinks with the guys, entertaining a client. Traffic was a nightmare. And I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But sometimes, he'd come home smelling like beer. Sometimes like that cheap, overpowering cologne they hand out as samples at the mall. Not his usual scent, something louder, something unfamiliar. When I asked, he'd just laugh, like I was being silly. He'd pull me into a half-hearted hug, the kind that didn't feel like him at all, and say, "You're cute when you're suspicious. Stick to worrying about whether we need more LaCroix in the fridge, babe," said with a smile, dismissed with a kiss on the forehead. Like my instincts were some adorable quirk, not the warning sirens they were. Our bed, once a place of comfort, started to feel cold, empty. He stopped reaching for me unless he'd had too much to drink, and when I reached for him, there were new comments, little things. "You've got that little pooch thing happening," he'd say, poking at my stomach while I lay there, naked and vulnerable. Or, "Your boobs look different since you gained weight." I laughed it off at first, because that's what I did. That's what I had learned to do, but inside, it chipped away at me. Tiny, invisible fractures running through my heart. I started pulling away without even meaning to, flinching when he touched me, making excuses when he wanted intimacy, and somehow, he twisted that too. "This is why men cheat," he said once, scrolling through Instagram without even looking at me, as if it was just a fact, as if my body, my fading trust, was the problem, not him. He never admitted to anything, never apologised. But the seed of doubt was there, planted deep, watered by every late night, every cheap cologne scent, every cruel, off-handed comment. I started watching him closer, started noticing the little things I used to brush aside, the way he hid his phone when he texted, the way he avoided eye contact when I asked simple questions, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. There were nights I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to stitch all the pieces together, but the pattern was ugly and undeniable. Still, I stayed, because leaving would mean admitting it out loud, and admitting it out loud meant acknowledging that the life I had built, the future I had imagined, wasn't real. It was smoke. It was mirrors. I kept telling myself it would pass, that maybe we just needed a vacation, or a date night, or a baby, anything to patch the cracks before the whole thing collapsed. But deep down, I knew. I just wasn't ready to say it yet. For a long time, I thought the worst had already happened, that the coldness, the distance, the tiny cuts to my heart, that was it. That was what falling out of love looked like. But I was wrong. So wrong. Because sometimes, what you see crumbling on the surface is nothing compared to what's rotting underneath. Sometimes the real betrayal isn't loud. It's quiet, patient, waiting. The truth was out there, hiding in places I hadn't dared to look. Hiding in numbers, in receipts, in late nights and careful lies. And once I started to really see it, once I let myself look, there was no unseeing it. This wasn't just a story about love fading. This was about secrets and survival. The real story was just beginning. It started with numbers, tiny little numbers that didn't add up. One night, after Nicholas stumbled into bed reeking of cheap whiskey and half-hearted apologies, I lay there, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster, and then I picked up my phone. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Maybe proof that I was wrong. Proof that I was paranoid. That I really was the crazy, sensitive wife he always joked about. But that's not what I found. The savings account, the one we were supposed to be building together, was bleeding money. Not all at once. Not big, dramatic withdrawals. But little ones. 200 here, 300 there. Almost always on Fridays. Always before he came home late, smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. Thousands of dollars. Gone. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might throw up. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. My fingers shook on the keyboard. Every click of the mouse felt like it echoed through my skull. I finally blurted it out to Oliver, my cubicle neighbour who was always rambling about crypto and stock market apps. I thought he'd tell me I was overreacting, that it was nothing. But instead, he just looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "You should start saving separately, just in case." Just in case. The words hit me harder than any insult Nicholas had ever thrown my way. I opened a new account that night. Capital One. Personal email. No paper statements. £100 every paycheck. Hidden away like a lifeline. A secret future. Just in case my marriage wasn't the safe place I had begged it to be. I started taking extra shifts, working late, pocketing overtime, smiling through the exhaustion, through the fear gnawing at my insides, and the whole time, Nicholas didn't even notice, because he wasn't looking, because he never really looked at me anymore, not unless he needed something to mock. Then came the night I found the credit card. Not our credit card, a hidden one. Statement sent to his work email, the one he never let me touch. I only found it because he passed out drunk on the couch, his laptop still open, emails glowing under the low blue light. VIP room, Lucky Star Entertainment. Names that sounded harmless until a quick Google search punched me in the gut. Strip clubs, gentlemen's lounges, hundreds of dollars. gone to women whose names he probably didn't even bother to ask. I sat there on the floor, the cold hardwood pressing into my legs, staring at the screen like it was a horror movie I couldn't stop watching. And still, I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because some part of me, the part he had spent years hollowing out, still thought maybe I could fix this. That maybe if I was prettier, quieter, better, he would stop looking elsewhere. But another part of me, the part he hadn't killed, was already moving, already calculating. I doubled the savings transfers, started packing little things in boxes, storing them in the trunk of my car, started scanning apartment listings during my lunch breaks, circling prices with shaking hands. Because now it wasn't just about sadness, it was about survival. I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I was building an exit, piece by piece, quietly, carefully. The way you tiptoe out of a burning house, hoping the flames don't notice until you're already gone. There's only so long you can patch up cracks before the whole thing crumbles. I spent months pretending, smiling when I wanted to scream, cooking dinner while I wanted to throw plates against the wall, sleeping next to a man who felt like a stranger who still had the audacity to call himself my husband. I kept waiting for a sign, some big flashing moment that would tell me it was time to go. But life doesn't always hand you signs. Sometimes it hands you a slow, smouldering wreck you have to crawl out of on your own. And then the call came. Tight, furious, crackling with the kind of rage that only comes from a man who's finally lost the very thing he thought he controlled. Nicholas had been fired. And in that moment, everything I had been holding inside, everything I had been too scared to admit, too scared to feel, burst wide open. The life we built was already in ruins. I was just the last one willing to admit it. This was where it all finally broke. The call came at 10:37 a.m, just as I was refilling the office printer with paper. I almost didn't answer, but something, maybe habit, maybe dread, made me swipe my thumb across the screen. Nicholas's voice exploded through the phone, tight and furious, every word clipped and bitter. "They let me go," he snarled. "They fucking let me go. Sebastian's department was spared. Diversity hire. Bullshit." I stood there, stapler in hand, frozen. My heart didn't race. It didn't drop. It just stopped. "I'm going out with the guys tonight," he barked, not asking, not even pretending anymore. "Don't bother making dinner." And just like that, he hung up. No apology, no fear, just anger. Rage that the world dared to take something from him, like it was owed to him forever. I don't remember finishing the workday. I don't remember driving home. But I remember the way the house felt when I walked through the door that night. Heavy, stale, like walking into a room where something had already died. He wasn't home. Of course he wasn't. I moved on autopilot, like someone stepping carefully through a battlefield. I logged into the bank account, transferred every penny I legally could into my private savings, packed the last of my things into the suitcase I'd hidden in the back of the closet, checked the lease confirmation email for my new apartment for the 100th time. It was done. All of it. Months of planning, of saving, of swallowing my pride, my rage, my grief. Done. He stumbled in sometime after 2 a.m, crashing through the door, reeking of beer and bad decisions. I pretended to sleep, listened as he muttered curses under his breath, listened as he stripped off his shoes, knocking over the lamp we picked out together at Target 3 years ago, listened as he collapsed onto the bed beside me, dead weight and dead dreams. The next morning he didn't even look at me, just sat at the kitchen table, red-eyed and snarling, stuffing cold cereal into his mouth like a man starving for something he couldn't name. "We're moving in with my parents," he announced, like a dictator declaring war. "You'll need to give notice at your little job. Not like you make enough to matter anyway." That's when something inside me, something that had been small and bruised and buried for so long, stood up, actually stood up. I looked at him, really looked at him. This man, this average man, with his thinning hair and his growing beer gut. This man who had spent years convincing me I was lucky he chose me, that I was nothing without him. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel sadness. I felt clarity. "I do have an opinion," I said, my voice shockingly calm. He blinked at me, confused, like a man hearing thunder on a clear day. "I'm leaving," I said. "I've been planning it for months. I know about the money, the credit cards, the strip clubs, all of it." His face twisted. Shock, disbelief, rage, fear, cycling so fast it was almost funny. "You can't leave," he spat, standing up so fast his chair toppled over. "You're nothing without me. No one's going to want you. You can't even manage." I didn't wait for him to finish. I didn't need to. I picked up my suitcase, the one I packed piece by piece while he wasn't looking. I walked to the door. He followed, sputtering, begging, threatening, a man drowning and blaming the tide. I opened the door, stepped out into the sunlight, and for the first time in years, I felt air in my lungs that didn't taste like fear. I thought walking out that door would be the end of the story, that leaving him, leaving the life I thought I had built, would be the hardest part. But real freedom isn't a clean break. It's messy, it's clumsy, it's terrifying and beautiful all at once. The truth is, escaping the cage was only the beginning. Learning how to live without looking over my shoulder, how to trust my own voice again, how to build a life that belonged to me, that was a whole different battle. And as it turned out, Nicholas wasn't done with me yet. The story was far from over. There were still new beginnings to stumble through, old ghosts to face, and a few unexpected turns I never could have seen coming. The first night alone was the quietest thing I had ever heard. No slammed doors, no muttered insults drifting down the hallway, no heavy footsteps pacing the bedroom floor while I pretended to sleep. Just silence. It should have felt peaceful. I should have been celebrating, dancing barefoot in my tiny new apartment, giddy with freedom. But instead, I sat on the floor in my half-unpacked living room, staring at a Target bag full of new towels and a shower curtain, and felt like the loneliest person in the world. The silence was deafening, and terrifying, and beautiful. I spent that first night scrolling my phone until the battery died, too restless to sleep, too wired to think straight. I watched YouTube videos about organising small spaces, about meal prepping for one, about finding yourself after losing everything you thought you wanted. Somewhere around 3 a.m, I cried. Not loud, messy sobs. Just a quiet, exhausted kind of crying that came from somewhere too deep to name. Freedom, it turns out, isn't fireworks and champagne. It's tiny, aching moments, like realising you don't know what brand of laundry detergent to buy because he always picked it. Like standing in the grocery store, frozen in front of 50 kinds of bread, wondering which one is your kind. Like opening a fridge that only has one toothbrush in the cup, one plate in the sink, one lonely carton of almond milk. Every small decision felt massive. Should I hang the shower curtain first or unpack the kitchen boxes? Should I buy the velvet hangers or stick to plastic? What if I chose wrong? What if I always chose wrong? I had been living so long in someone else's shadow. I didn't even know how to move without checking for permission. But the weirdest part? Little by little, the fear started turning into something else. The second night, I bought myself a frozen pizza. Pineapple and ham, the combination Nicholas used to mock relentlessly. I ate the whole thing, sitting cross-legged on the floor, watching the dumb reality shows he used to say were rotting my brain. And it tasted like rebellion. It tasted like freedom. The third night, I ordered a cheap set of fairy lights online, the kind he would have called a waste of money. When they arrived, I strung them haphazardly across the living room window, the soft glow filling the space in a way words never could. Every small choice was a battle. Every small choice was a victory. And yeah, I still jumped every time my phone buzzed, still half expected to see his name flashing across the screen, still caught myself rehearsing conversations in my head like I needed a defence just to exist. But little by little, inch by inch, I was building something, not just a life, a self, A self who didn't flinch at laughter. A self who didn't shrink from sunlight. A self who was messy and scared and stubborn enough to keep going anyway. Freedom wasn't neat. It wasn't painless. It was a series of tiny, stubborn acts of choosing myself over and over and over again. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own story anymore. For a little while, it felt like maybe I had outrun the storm. Like maybe, just maybe, the worst was finally behind me. I was learning how to breathe again, how to live without constantly shrinking myself to fit someone else's anger. But storms don't just disappear. Not when someone like Nicholas is still out there, nursing his wounded pride, still convinced that if he couldn't be happy, neither could I. The quiet didn't last, and before I could fully find my footing, before I could even finish unpacking all my boxes, he found me. The past wasn't done with me yet, and this time, I wasn't the same woman he had left behind. It happened on a Tuesday. I was working from home, still trying to figure out how to set up my internet properly, when the doorbell rang. I thought it was the DoorDash I ordered, Thai food from the place down the street, a small reward for surviving another day. I opened the door without thinking, and there he was, Nicholas, standing there in the same ratty college hoodie he refused to throw away, holding a sad bouquet of grocery store flowers, the 99 sticker still clinging to the plastic. For a second, muscle memory almost made me step aside, almost made me let him in, but then my hands, my traitorous, shaking hands, grabbed the door instead, slamming it shut so fast I felt the breeze whip against my face. I locked the deadbolt. I pressed my back against the door. I tried to remember how to breathe. "Babe, come on," he said through the wood, his voice syrupy and familiar, and so wrong. "I just want to talk. I've changed. I'm going to therapy. I'm getting better." He wasn't. He hadn't. I knew it like I knew my own name. I didn't answer. I sat there, heart hammering against my ribs, hands clenched into fists on my lap. That's when he started cycling through the greatest hits. "I'm sorry about everything. You're being dramatic. Remember how good we were together. I miss you. You're nothing without me. I love you. You ungrateful bitch." 45 minutes. 45 minutes of him swinging from begging to blaming to threatening. My neighbour, sweet old Mrs. Kravitz from across the hall, must have heard the noise. She called the police. By the time the officers arrived, Nicholas was gone, just tyre tracks peeling away from the curb. Just a silence that felt heavier than any screaming could have been, but he didn't leave without a parting shot, a letter, slid under my door. 8 pages of alternating apologies and bile, waiting for me like a landmine in my hallway. I didn't read it. Not then. Maybe not ever. The police took a report, advised me to install cameras, told me to stay alert. I nodded. I smiled. I thanked them. And then I sat on the bathroom floor, back against the cool tile, and shook so hard I thought my bones might shatter. I wasn't scared of Nicholas finding me again. I was scared of how easily part of me still wanted to make excuses for him, how deeply the old instincts still ran. But then I thought about all the nights I cried in silence while he snored beside me. All the times he made me feel small, stupid, invisible, and a new feeling rose up. Hot, electric, undeniable. Anger. Real, bone-deep anger. Not fear, not sadness. Rage. I ordered cameras that night, changed my passwords again, talked to my landlord about extra locks, filed for a no-contact order the next morning. This time, I wasn't going to wait to be hurt again. This time, I wasn't going to let him write the ending to my story. I was done living afraid, done letting him take up space in my life, done letting his voice drown out my own, and for the first time in a very, very long time. I realised he wasn't the scary one anymore. I was, because I had finally, fully chosen myself, and I wasn't going back. After the fire comes the Thursday, comes the quiet. Not peace, not yet. Just the raw, aching quiet that comes after everything you thought you needed burns down. For the first time in years, there were no battles to fight, no tightrope to walk, no words to dodge like bullets. Just me, and a life that felt so empty. It was almost blinding. But empty doesn't have to mean broken. Empty can mean possibility, a blank page, a second chance. And as terrifying as it was to stand there, alone, at the edge of something I couldn't yet name, it was also the first time I realised maybe the best parts of my story were still unwritten. Healing didn't feel like a victory lap. It felt like learning how to walk again, barefoot, on broken glass. At first, every day was just about surviving. Getting up when all I wanted was to disappear under the covers, making coffee for one, choosing clothes without hearing a voice in my head sneering about what I looked like. I bought groceries, real groceries, not just frozen dinners and snack packs. I wandered the aisles of the store, touching things, turning them over in my hands, asking myself, do I like this? Or was it just what he liked? It's amazing how much you realise you never truly chose when you finally have the chance to. I learned I hate salt and vinegar chips. I learned I actually love pineapple on pizza. I learned that I prefer lavender-scented candles, even though Nicholas used to say they smelled like a grandma's purse. Small rebellions. Small victories. I bought cheap frames from Target and hung pictures on my walls. Photos of me and Kira laughing so hard our faces blurred. Snapshots of sunsets, silly postcards, things that didn't match, things that made no sense except that they made me happy. I let myself take up space, in my home, in my own mind. Some nights, the loneliness hit harder than I wanted to admit. I'd find myself reaching for my phone, wanting to tell someone, anyone, that I finally assembled the IKEA bookshelf by myself, that I didn't burn the pasta this time, that my basil plant hadn't died yet, but there was no one to tell. And that loneliness, it was a different kind of ache, not sharp and panicked like before, softer, quieter, almost sacred, a reminder that I was still here, still fighting, still healing. I started journaling again, messy, angry, joyful pages, full of spelling mistakes and bad poetry. I went on long walks without telling anyone where I was going, without checking in, without apologising for breathing. I bought myself flowers for no reason at all. I let myself laugh, really laugh, at stupid things on TV, snort laughs and ugly giggles Nicholas would have rolled his eyes at. I adopted a cat, a scrappy little thing with one torn ear and an attitude like she ran the world. I named her Potato. Potato didn't care if I left dishes in the sink, didn't care if I cried during laundry folding, didn't care if I danced in the kitchen at midnight to 90s pop songs. She just curled up beside me, purred her judgmental little purr, and existed. And somehow, that was enough. I wasn't magically fixed. I still checked my rearview mirror more often than I should. Still sometimes flinched at loud voices, still doubted myself in quiet, sharp moments. But little by little, inch by inch, I was building a life. One where no one made me feel like a burden. One where my voice mattered. One where I didn't have to shrink to be loved. Freedom wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, it was in the quiet, in the stubborn daily choosing of myself, even when it hurt, even when it scared me, especially when it scared me, and somehow, in all that terrifying newness, I realised something. I wasn't lost anymore, I was just becoming. Healing isn't a straight line. It's not a neat story where the villain disappears and the heroine rides off into the sunset. Sometimes, the past tries to claw its way back in. Sometimes it knocks at your door in ways you don't expect. Sometimes it doesn't knock at all. And when it does, you find out exactly how much you've changed. Exactly how much strength you've quietly, stubbornly built inside yourself. I wasn't the same woman who used to flinch at slammed doors. I wasn't the same woman who used to swallow her voice just to keep the peace. Nicholas didn't know it yet, But the version of me he was coming for, she wasn't going to break this time. It happened again, sooner than I thought. A knock at the door. Not frantic, not violent, just steady, confident, like he had every right to be there. My heart skipped. Old instincts kicked in. Panic, dread, the urge to hide, to disappear. But I didn't. Not this time. I stood up. I straightened my shoulders. I walked to the door. The security camera feed flashed on my phone. Nicholas looking smaller somehow, angrier. Still pretending like nothing had changed. Still pretending I was his to command. He called my name. Soft at first, then louder, more demanding. I let him knock. I let him shout. And I didn't open the door. Instead, I called the police. Calmly, clearly, like I was ordering coffee. I didn't plead. I didn't cry. I stated the facts. There's a man trespassing. There's a no-contact order in place. I'm alone. Please send someone. Then I sat down on the couch, potato curled up against my hip, and I waited. Nicholas kept knocking. Pounding now, yelling things. Threats, apologies, the same tired cycle he always spun. He thought if he was loud enough, I would break. He thought if he scared me enough, I would open the door. He didn't know me anymore. He didn't know the woman who sat there, breathing steadily, listening not with fear, but with anger, with pride. When the police arrived, I watched from the window. Watched as Nicholas tried to charm them at first, the way he used to charm me. Watched as that fake smile cracked when the officers didn't buy it. Watched as they handcuffed him and walked him to the cruiser, his face twisted in a snarl that had once terrified me. Now, it just looked pathetic. When the door finally closed behind him, when the flashing lights faded from my street, I didn't collapse. I didn't cry. I stood there, hand on the doorframe, breathing in the quiet he had tried so hard to shatter, and I realised I wasn't scared anymore. Not of him, not of the loneliness, not of the future. For so long, Nicholas had been the storm I thought would drown me. But now, he was just weather, and I had learned how to build shelter. The world outside that door was wide and messy and terrifying, but it was mine, for the first time, truly mine. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living, choosing myself every single day, and this time, there was no going back. It's strange how the world looks different after you stop surviving and start living. The colours are sharper. The air feels heavier and lighter at the same time. The smallest things, the smell of fresh coffee, the way sunlight spills across your floor, feel like miracles. For so long, my story had been about running, escaping, surviving. But now, for the first time, it was about building, choosing, becoming, not the version of me someone else wanted, not the smaller, quieter shadow I used to be. Me. Fully, finally. And as I stood there, in my tiny, imperfect apartment with my stubborn cat and my uneven picture frames, I realised the end of one story was just the beginning of another, a story I would write myself, page by page, choice by choice, step by beautiful, terrifying step. I didn't wake up one morning magically healed. There was no grand epiphany, no Hollywood montage of me dancing in the rain or tossing my head back in slow-motion laughter. It was quieter than that. It was choosing to make coffee every morning, even when the bed felt safer. It was putting on real clothes instead of hiding in pyjamas all day. It was learning to live with the silence, and then, somehow, starting to love it. Little things changed first. I started smiling at strangers again, not because I had to, not to be polite, but because sometimes I actually wanted to. I started saying yes to things, yes to movie nights with Kira, yes to random weekend markets and late-night drives, and singing loudly off-key to old songs I loved before I forgot how to love anything. I let myself exist without apology, without shrinking, without waiting for someone to tell me I was good enough to take up space. I bought a ridiculous, oversized sweater that made me look like a walking marshmallow and wore it everywhere, even though Nicholas would have rolled his eyes and called it lazy. I painted my nails bright blue because I liked the way it made my hands look, strong and alive. I stopped needing permission to be happy. Some nights the memories still crept in, soft and sharp all at once, a scent, a song, a street corner, and suddenly I was back there, small and scared. But now, I knew how to breathe through it. I knew that the past could visit, but it didn't get to move back in. I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living, fully, messily, beautifully. I adopted small rituals that made the world feel like mine again. Lighting a candle before bed, playing music while I cooked, writing terrible poetry in the margins of library books, don't worry, in pencil. I built a life not out of spite, not out of desperation, but out of love. Love for the girl who stayed too long. Love for the woman who finally walked away. One morning I caught my reflection in the mirror, hair a mess, hoodie stained with coffee, eyes a little puffy from laughing too hard the night before, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled at her, not because she was perfect, not because she had it all figured out, but because she survived, because she stayed when it was easier to leave herself, because she fought her way back to life, one broken, breathtaking step at a time. This is what healing looks like. Not a straight line, not a finish line, but 1,000 tiny choices, stitched together by stubborn hope. I am not who I was. I'm not who he tried to make me. I am more. I am mine. And that, messy, beautiful, imperfect, is enough. This story isn't just about loss or survival. It's about remembering that even after the deepest betrayals, even after you lose everything you thought you needed, you are still whole, you are still worthy, you are still enough. Thank you for walking with me through every tear, every breath, every battle, for believing, even when it hurt, that healing is possible. My story isn't unique. It belongs to anyone who ever chose themselves, even when it felt impossible. And if you're still fighting your way back, you are not alone. You never were.